Christ returns, speaks his truth. Christ articles. Article 14, urgent message from Christ. Christ said, I am coming to the mind of my recorder because there is something urgent I have to say. Love your enemies. Forgive those who ill use you. Pray for those who speak evil of you. And if you cannot do this in your own strength, seek by all possible means to do it in the power of spirit, divine consciousness. Pray and meditate and ask for help. It will be given you if you persist. If the ego persists in forcing you thoughts downward again to virulence and anger, and raising all kinds of arguments as to why you should condemn someone who has deeply hurt and even wounded you physically, go into meditation again and again, seeking insight and relief from your dilemma, asking to have those troublesome, recurrent, angry, and vindictive thoughts removed from you. Not to please God, as you have been taught by the churches, but to protect yourself from the whiplash of your angry thoughts, which rebound in your lives, bearing violent upheavals and further rows and arguments to deal with. For whatever power you give to resentful things, that power will send a direct electrical stream of consciousness to the person who hurt you, and the stream of consciousness returns, zinging its way back to you in due course like a boomerang. You must know that every electrical field creates a like magnetic field. The two always work together, so that what goes out eventually returns. This is a scientific law of existence, but what science does not yet admit is this. Electrical forces power the mind. It is the consciousness impulse of get going in the mind. Electrical force is a facet of consciousness. Two-faced magnetism powers the human and animal emotions. It attracts and it repels. It is the impulse of human love and the impulse of hatred. Magnetism is experienced by all living things as emotion and feeling. I have described this truth fully in my letters 5 and 6. Not only this, scientific medical knowledge has discovered what I understood so well in Palestine 2,000 years ago, that all the thoughts taking form in your brain descend into your pituitary gland via your hypothalamus, and the negativity and emotional trauma, lowered vibrations they contain, is passed on to your organs, blood, and entire body, causing a depletion in energy and eventual illness. This is the phenomenon producing psychosomatic ailments acknowledged by the medical profession. When in Palestine 2,000 years ago, I told the Jews not to worry about drinking from unwashed cups, but to take note of and be concerned about what came out of their mouths. I have translated what was reported in the Gospels in the New Testament into the kind of words I actually spoke to the Jews, who did not have the remotest idea of what I was trying to tell them, and sadly, the various Christian churches are just as ignorant today. How could they understand? They did not have the enlightenment I received in the desert, which illumined my mind and imprinted in my mind the spiritual knowledge of the origin of creation and the laws of existence. But you, who live in your world today, have had countless teachers coming to earth, explaining scientific facts, and also mystics who have led you into metaphysical, spiritual truth, preparing you for my letters, which contain the very highest truth of all, the true nature of your source of origin, which you term God, and the universal laws of existence. I now want you to think about the truly terrible and outrageous work certain people initiate in your world, despite all these teachers of facets of truth. The ongoing bloodshed in Iraq indicates which should make you all think deeply about the likely boomerang from such destructive actions. I want you to think of this situation from a spiritual viewpoint, which does not condemn, but sees the truth inherent in the thoughts and actions involved in the situation. Here you had a man, Saddam Hussein, who was determined to take power in Iraq and bring about peace, and plenty for his people, unevolved in true spirituality. He used most harsh and violent ways to control a nation, to silence those people who gave him problems. These people used violence in an uprising against him, and he poured violence back onto them. Here was a tyrannical dictator and a sect of people of the same mental and moral level. Their spiritual vibration, despite all the prayer and outward religious show, were as dark and dense and low as it is possible to attain in your world today. Hussein and these unruly people deserved each other. The Iraqi people tolerated, some even admired and applauded him because he kept peace for a volatile nation and gave them a chance to live their daily lives as peacefully as their innately aggressive nature would permit them. He fell foul of the United States, angered its leader, and equally governed by ego, the leaders decided to punish Saddam Hussein by imposing sanctions. Later on, a humanitarian impulse prompted the inauguration of a system, Oil for Food, which helped the hungry people of Iraq and gave American access to the oil they needed. But this measure was a severe blow to Hussein's pride and did not alleviate the national deprivation of general luxury and everyday goods enjoyed by their neighbors. I want you people of the world to give empathetic thought to the enormous volumes of resentment, hatred, anguish brought about by this action of a nation strong in their abundant wealth, armaments, trained soldiers, sailors, and airmen. I want you to understand that such national emotion becomes a living force of destruction of huge proportion. It is certain that no one truly on the path of Christ's way, my way, would ever have allowed such a sadistic course. Faced with the problem of having to deal with a Saddam Hussein, such a leader, enlightened in the spiritual and scientific laws of existence, would have called a session of enlightened people to meet, to meditate, and ask for guidance. My guidance would most certainly have been to call a meeting with Saddam Hussein and to point out the tragedy which would eventually result from the impasse between the two countries. An enlightened leader, instead of lording it over Hussein and threatening him with war, would have asked him and his advisers to drop a document, an agreement which both countries could live with in friendship, and which would promote a growth and domestic enrichment program for both countries. Such an enlightened leader would then read Iraqi proposals to establish peace and harmony, would discuss it peacefully with a sincere desire to establish well-being for all. He would call on his enlightened people to meditate and bring back any adjustments which had been received from meditation. In this way, the people under Saddam Hussein would have been gradually freed from the stranglehold of a tyrant. Saddam himself would have seen the benefits derived from a peaceful approach instead of an aggressive one, and Arab states would have been impressed by the success of the venture. This would also have caused the Muslims to rethink their present interpretation of the Quran. But what is the acknowledged and generally accepted worldly way? What has the human spirit, the human ego, accomplished today? Consider whether there can be any lasting benefit from this behavior outlined below. A peaceful nation, a peaceful people, already deprived of normal trade facilities with other nations, have been bombed nightly, their buildings built with great effort and expenditure of money, and offering various services to the people are destroyed. Night after night, innocent people have been subjected to the terror of bombs, asking themselves, where will they fall? Who will be hit? Will they find us in the rubble? Will we lose a family member? Will we all be killed? What have these people done to deserve such a terrifying ordeal other than knuckle down and try to live as happily as they could under a tyrant whom the USA hates? Prior to this, in USA, another tyrannical fanatic sent planes to destroy the Twin Towers of the Trade Center in New York. A great cry of fury, anger, revenge arose from the American people. They lost many people, loved ones, in the destruction. Every year there are Christian church services remembering the dead, and a great many tears are shed in the deluge of grief thinking of them. Think for a moment. Christian services. Is there any talk of forgiveness of those who are instrumental in this destruction? Are Americans shedding tears for the innocent who died under the hail of bombs deposited night after night for no good reason other than a vitriolic hatred of Hussein? Do they hold service for the Iraqi dead? Do they even consider they have murdered innocents who had no protection against the USA horrific weapons and had never done them a moment's harm? Just consider the weight of the emotional distress unleashed by all this insufferable and arrogant destruction of another country, destruction which has freed all the rebel fighting groups which Hussein had kept in check, unleashed a most foul mode of killing others, the suicide bomb. Every time such bombs go off, thus killing innocent bystanders, the Americans who supported war against Iraq should realize that it was their support which made such suicide bombing possible. Just consider the unleashing of the gigantic, untold emotional vibration of horror, hate, revenge, and retaliation that is now directed at America. How do the Americans think that all this hatred energy will be manifested against them? Because it will be manifested as death and destruction. It is a law of existence. Even Christian churches claim to believe in this law. Where there is no forgiveness, there is retribution in the form of cause and effect. Forgiveness, complete and total and loving, dispels the violent hatred energies. Without forgiveness, they gather momentum from the ongoing resentment of the opponent. Read the articles on cracks in your planet, and then ask yourself, how all the terrifying load of hate will be manifested. Who in America will sooner or later be the target? Therefore I tell you clearly, in your home, in your community, in your town, in your state, in your country, forgive whoever has injured you in any way, big or small. Let this word ring out across your land through any means you have. And if you cannot forgive easily because your ego will not let you, then bring your hurt and anger to divine consciousness, which I term the Father when in Palestine, and ask for its inflow of spiritual directing power to gently ease and remove the burden from your minds. Will your religions tell you this? No, they did not when I was in Palestine, and they will not now. Indeed, those who occupy the highest position in the most powerful nations and cause the most horrific damage in the world are received with pomp and ceremony, smiles and handshakes by the religious leaders of the various Christian religions. The blind grip hands and give blessing to the blind. To hear truth, you must come direct to me. I am truly alive and universal in being. Come, and I will receive your call and will lovingly respond to it. Have the courage to join Christ's way and to follow the teachings I have brought the world in my letters. They will show you how to remain in tune and accord with the laws of existence. They will help you come into harmony with the universe itself, and all things will then work toward your greatest good and happiness and protection. End of article.